Howdy, folks. So to start out, I'm going to do something I did at a NACIS a couple years ago and actually pass around a sketchbook I did. Start here and just feel free to look through it, pass it around. When you're looking at the maps up here, just keep in mind that that's kind of where a lot of the stuff starts in terms of just exploring different styles and kind of the just like the subject matter of like places I've been, things I find that are neat, people I enjoy. A lot of the stuff you're saying up there just starts there, so yeah. Please don't steal it. So I live in DC, which above everything else is known for having a lot of museums. And when I travel, I like to hit up a couple as well. And I always find it kind of fascinating chewing on the difference between what we make on a day-to-day basis and the kind of maps you see dressing museum walls. Not to say that like something in a museum is inherently more valuable than the things we do make on a day-to-day basis. Lord knows our like locator maps and government maps and lowly bar charts probably do more like useful work than a lot of the things in there do. But it's still something fun to kind of chew on. And when I think about like the things in museums and various places that I see where the art really strikes me, I feel like it's got a couple of these inherent qualities with it. First one being stories. If you haven't been to the Museum of Visionary Art in Baltimore, hard recommend. Whereas in classical art museums, you'll see incredible Renaissance paintings by child prodigies. Here you find baseballs that a lifetime umpire just drew and painted and gave out to players he enjoyed. Beauty, just a well-balanced piece that's quick to read and really fun to kind of pore over the small details of. Commitment. Kudos, Matthew, on the talk this morning. It was great. But we're all going to die, and we all know how precious our own time is. So seeing the product of what someone else kind of poured theirs into is just a really quick way to, it's very respectful. And then enormity, just something that kind of dominates our view, that you can see from a mile away and become really engrossed in. And sometimes we do strive for those qualities in our day-to-day work, but there's a lot of other factors that take precedent over those. Stories are dope, but clarity is king. We want our maps to be very clear and concise. Beauty is lovely, but we have to map the data. You can't just put a mountain range on Africa because you think it'll more balance out the piece. Commitment is great, but we have deadlines. And enormity is cool, but we want our maps to travel, whether that's on like a mobile device, desktop, or literally in someone's like back pocket. Which is to say, it's just hard to find the space for that in a lot of professional work. But there's always personal projects where you're completely free to do whatever you want because there's no actual stakes involved with it. So I'm going to talk about a couple of ones I've done. They're all in the map gallery, but first one is a cherry blossom map of DC. And I kind of made this because I was trying to think of things in the city I currently live in that I could map that are just really inherently kind of beautiful on their own. And the cherry blossoms have a really lovely history of being gesture of goodwill from Japan over here. And they are just really neat things. So to kind of start with the inspiration for it, very much rooted in like Japanese woodblock prints, the absolutely gorgeous form of art around the turn of the century and to this day. Just really, really love those watercolors. Muka, which I had earlier from the kind of beauty slide of it. Everyone thinks when I think Art Nouveau of like the pale people and the swirly hair, but like really like the layouts to me are just like so incredibly cool because it's really complex, but there's a movement to it that's really easy to follow. And while some of the like icons he might use are a bit more spiritual and more like coded to like different types of flowers and the plays, it's still really visually complex, but like really easy to look at. It's nice. Next one was when I was immediately thought about doing this, I also looked at like the archives, like what are other maps that people made of cherry blossoms. And so this was by Caroline Van Veen, and just absolutely love this. I think because they are a big tourist draw, you get a lot of maps made of them over the years. This one in particular, I really love the tidal basin it's roughly shaped like that, but it's pretty heavily distorted there. And the inclusion of Mount Vernon is kind of questionable because it's much, much farther south. But yeah, you can very clearly see the influence of this one. So set out to make the map. This was the easy part. Probably did this in a day. When people think of the cherry blossoms, they all think of the tidal basin, which has the biggest density of them. But like, if you live in DC or if you've been there, like they're everywhere. Like every single block has its own tree. So I really wanted to kind of try to show that by doing like a little graded density map of it, and then just tilted the grid to match the angle of DC there. For everything else in it, did a handful of research. So like, I got a book on cherry blossoms, and there's also a whole bunch of different varieties of them. Some are more pink, some are more green, but just kind of went through and like sketched out all those and tried to figure out, okay, what are the leaves? Like, what's unique about this one? How can I represent that? And the benefit of doing something that's also in your backyard is you get to also do your own reference photos. So hopped on my bike, went to Peak Bloom at the time, and took a bunch of pictures of things I could use for it. When it came to kind of finally starting it out, I usually do pencil to begin with, but in this case I think I did digital. You can kind of see the progression there of kind of the initial just really, really roughs of just like, this shape will roughly go there to the next one. And by the time I'd finished the digital, it looks more or less the way the final thing ended up. But one of the goals of this is to kind of merge both an infographic and what was the second thing, Andrew? You had your three types of things: infographic, gallery piece. Yeah, so part of the goal of this is kind of merge infographic and gallery piece together a little bit. Like I decorated data viz. I don't know if there's a term for it, but just something that is very indulgent and like is more than just the data viz that you would usually see. And a part of that is kind of trying to take a note from like Muka and making that decoration actually have some meaning to it. So at the very top, in the left corner, and in the little kind of like nooks and crannies of this piece, that is the life cycle of the cherry blossom buds as they kind of start out, bloom, and burst. At the very top, I wanted to kind of allude to the just grace that it is when you're like looking up at a little blossom in the blue sky. Then there's the map. And then in the middle, we have DC. Taking a note from Caroline, this is not an actual view of DC you can find. It is heavily distorted. The entire middle there, like to get like the Capitol there and the Washington Monument there, like a lot of liberties were taken, but it fits in there. Then on the bottom, we have just like the kind of view of the tidal basin when it is windy and you see all the blossoms kind of going and all the trees together. So then I took about 3 to 4 months off of this project because I really wanted to make it as a woodblock print. I can't carve, and again, time is precious. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick up that hobby. So I was trying to find a way to shortcut it and looked into laser cutters and tried that out. Did not end up working out. To carve that thing, which is 6 inches wide or something, it was taking like 2 hours. So the idea of doing that for an entire full-blown one wasn't going to work, and it was way too brittle. So eventually kind of gave up and decided to watercolor it. I usually use these watercolor inks. They're just really high saturation. And you can see here kind of like a little bit of studies on just getting the colors right. This is like the, I guess, practical version of like the hue and saturation sliders on Photoshop of trying to say, okay, how can I get these to match what I want them to look like? And the first one went pretty darn good. I painted the base map this pink because the cherry blossoms are very white and pink, and wanted the white to pop more, so everything gets kicked back by having kind of the pink base. And it was mostly there, but there were a couple of things that just didn't quite sit well with me. For the top part, I was kind of going back and forth between doing these kind of more cloudy versions of it or doing a detailed actual like petals that you could see. And pretty quickly thought that like the petals just looked so much better than the kind of blocky version of it. And then on the bottom as well, I also did the cloudy thing there, and just once it was like finished, I was just like, man, if it was just like not have that black outline, if it was a little bit more realistic, it would look so much better. So went ahead and repainted the darn thing. This is also in the map gallery. You can kind of see them side by side. This one went pretty swimmingly, but there's a couple other quirks with this one in that when you do like watercolors, usually when you paint it, it goes on super dark and then it lightens up when the paint dries. Not in this case. The corners ended up being so darn dark. They just felt like a pity. And then when I went to do the data as well, unfortunately, I think I painted that a little dark, and so it was a little hard to actually read the data viz, which, as much as I'm talking about everything outside of that, that was very core to this, I felt. So finished it up in Photoshop. I decided it was far enough along, and like ultimately kind of doing these kind of tangible, I guess, versions of these things. The big benefit is you get this really lovely texture. You get a unity of a vision. You get a very consistent look to it, which is really nice. So it's kind of like a before and after from like the final version, and then all the Photoshop touch-ups at the end on it. And then, yeah, printed it out. I did it on some fancier paper, which is expensive, but like, man, when the light hits it, it's great. Ended up, I think, I did like a limited run of them. So I did like 30 of the big one, 100 of the small one. To the point on like original versus unique. Thank you. Great things in the talk. In that way, like I thought like doing kind of like a limited run would be a lovely way to kind of make these fairly unique. And yeah, like a little bit expensive. I've sold about 15%, I think, so far of the whole batch. But I'm also not going to markets, really. I've got a Google form to order one. If you'd like to order one, let me know. But yeah, and they're also available on the Map Store's website as well.
I've sold half of mine.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know that. That's great. But like ultimately, like outside of like the business side of it, I'm still down a little bit, but I'll make that up during next year's peak bloom, I'm sure. What's really been lovely to me about this has been like the affirmation, I guess, of the goal. Like when I set out to kind of make this, I really wanted to I was really hoping it would like resonate with people, and so far it kind of has. People seem to really appreciate the extra attention to detail and all the work that went into it, which just very affirming for the mission I'm trying to do here. So, map number 2, Smithsonian's and additional museums of Washington, D.C. So this one began sorely because of this painting. This is the wealth and benefits of the Spanish monarchy under Charles III. Less so the message, but like just the painting itself, like just really, really cool painting. Between like the perspective on it, the colors, all the figures kind of like dangling off the sides. I think I immediately saw this and was like, oh cool, you can like punch out heaven and just put a base map in there and like, it'd be great. And it might be a little basic, but like the obelisk in the bottom, the fact that it's a rectangle, like it's like, National Mall, great. Like you have Washington Monument down there. And yeah, once again, hit the sketchbook up, was just like, what would this look like if we, like, would this work? Would it fit in there? The digital rough, which is more about actually measuring things out and actually figuring out, like, okay, where will these things sit? How will this all work? Digital is great for this stuff just because it is so, you have transform tools, you have layers, you have so much you can do there for it. Got a projector out and traced it. I did a bunch of photos of the buildings and also warped them in Photoshop to kind of get this one-point perspective onto it. And painted the darn thing. I was trying to do it ahead of a market that someone invited me to, and so I really rushed it. And by the time I got it to this point, it just was not working for me once again. I was going to originally do like a digital in the middle of it and have all the buildings on the side, but once I got to like this point, I was looking at it being like, man, like a little bit too different between the two styles. Having the extra ring of things you could find inside the Smithsonian Museums seemed like it'd be just significantly better. Once again, back to the minds of doing studies. Did multiple different drafts of it with the paints to make sure that all the colors would work out together and the scale would work. And went back to Photoshop and added in that extra ring of all different objects you can find within the museums. And then finally, for the outer ring, originally I was going to try to do like people actually wandering on the National Mall, but the perspective of the buildings is already difficult enough, and the scale would just be very wonky. So outside of all the Smithsonian's, there's a lot of gardens, lovely gardens, and they all have different flowers in them. So as I was taking photos of the buildings, I also started taking photos of those, and kind of decided to put that all along the outside ring. And there's a couple of Easter eggs in there too, but you'll have to search for them with a magnifying glass to find them. I've got a glass table, and I just throw a lamp underneath and use that to trace out that paint print. Brought that, again, digitally to test out different colors and kind of make sure I was having good sensibilities there. And that's basically where this one is right now. It's not finished yet. You can kind of see the unfinished bit in the top corner, but hopefully before the end of the year. Again, these take forever to make, but And so you might have noticed a trend here. Both projects are DC-based and somewhat market-minded, but that's not a coincidence. I have a handful of projects I also want to do, but I'm closer to the subjects of those. If the cherry blossom map had not gone over as well, well. But if the map I want to do of a summer camp I went to goes bad, like, ooh, that would look so bad if I tried to do that as a charity map. So they're kind of like rough drafts and, again, proof of concepts for just this kind of style in general. But I'm going to end on a non-map project that kind of fits the same mold called Bountiful Berries. And so I work at the Wall Street, I work... I worked at the Wall Street Journal for nearly 4 years, work at the Washington Post now. Depending on the day, you might be making like 1 to 5 of these, the lowly bar charts. You've probably seen many bar charts like it. This is of Blueberries in Mexico production from 2017. When it was first made, it was printed on 600,000 print papers sent all across the nation, but on newsprint, so who knows how much of that is still around. And it's online still, but it's behind like a paywall portcullis, and it came out in 2017. No one's checking that news article. But this chart means a lot to me because, as you can probably guess, this was the first chart I did for a professional newsroom. And I thought about like tracking down a copy of it in print if one of those miraculously survived, and framing it, or just printing out another one. But you might just decided to go to familiar territory instead. I went out and got the largest canvas I felt comfortable spending money on, which is about 3.5 feet, and took some acrylic paints, and now I have this lovely piece of home decor for my kitchen. Rescued from the abyss, it now makes my guests do a little double take and go like, what? Why? And ultimately, it's because it brings me joy, and it honors this very specific, silly, niche thing. And my medium is mostly paints, but I want to emphasize that, like, the spirit of all this stuff, I think, like, it can be whatever medium, whether that's woodworking, knitting, embroidery, same kind of deals. Heck, I think even, like, digital products. Like, there's clearly some, like, digital work out there that is really indulgent and very poured over. But yeah, if you need a fire, just think about what brings you joy or a subject that you do want to honor, because that goes a long way to kind of giving you the push to make the big indulgent maps of your dreams, and they will take forever to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. Questions?
Trying not to hog the mic too much,
good.
but first of all, I would like to say that all of your work that I've ever seen has been fantastic, so much so that it's kind of intimidating and terrifying. Gorgeous, beautiful. No, so as someone who likes the idea of making exhaustive kind of elaborate, you just said a word a minute ago that I really loved, but I can't remember it right now. Indulgent, I think was the word. As someone who likes the idea of making those, but who did not spend much time developing an artistic skill, I have a lot more technical skills than I do artistic. I would say, what kind of things would you recommend to kind of supplement or fill gaps, kind of like what you were talking about, like the wood printing, where you're like, I want to do this thing, but it's going to take too much time. I just have to make something else work. What would you recommend in those kind of cases? So
I actually have a final slide here, which is like my little inspiration shelf in my apartment. It's similar to like the wood carving thing. Like there's a limitation of like what you have learned up to a point. But at the same time, like, I see inspiration like this as, like, because I'm a cartographer, my stuff is markedly different than this. Like, you can still be inspired by work and then try to, like, figure out, okay, but with what I have, what can I make? Okay. And in a way, like, that's also going to be transformative of, like, moving towards that, I guess. So I don't know if that helps, like, or,
like it gets at the idea. Yeah. Thank you.
Like, yeah. Well.
I don't expect you to have all of the answers. Thank you.
Can I keep your sketchbook?
Nope.
Oh.
Please don't. But thank you.
All right, Andrew, across the room.
What's a medium that you haven't made stuff in that you would like to one day?
I was actually going to try to do an oil painting map for the raffle. But the one problem with like physical mediums is that like you actually are like limited by like what they do, and oil paint takes forever to dry. So I only started doing that like 5 weeks ago, and yeah, like so I'm looking for a subject to do an oil painting map of. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but like there's gonna be one someday. How far did the sketchbook get at this point? Is it like a... Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it hasn't come my way yet. I'm eager to see it. I'm curious if you do stuff with universities. Do you speak to school groups? I teach graphic design and then design for responsible innovation at the university, and design history at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And everybody in this session, oh my gosh, I want my students to know about what you do, so I'm going to show them. But I just am curious if that's part of what you do. Do you speak to people in universities, school groups?
I've done like friends that are teachers have like brought me in to like do little talks during the class. Yeah, sure. Like, I haven't done too much of that yet, but like would be happy to. Yeah, there's so much great Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
So this is a long, meandering question that is for all the speakers, and I feel like I should sort of be lying down in like a therapist-style session as I ask it. So in listening to all of your talks, and I guess NACIS more broadly, the reason why I love it so much is because we've all coalesced around a medium that is like, how do we deal with the way that we move through the world, right? And in all these talks, I've sort of seen us straddling the line between fiction and nonfiction, because, you know, that is cartography, you know, bring it back to the one-to-one Borges style map. And I guess a question for all the speakers is, in making your maps and thinking about the way that you're representing, the way that you're seeing the world, how does that make you, I think differently about space or place, or like you and your position in space and the way that you interact with it? It's just a question, I think, broadly about finding joy in small things.
Yeah. Oh man, I've done a couple of like blog posts kind of around space a little bit. Like, it's really cool, especially like when you can dig into like one place in particular. Like for like the Post and like news graphics, there's a lot of like parachuting into a place and like learning one very specific thing about it. But there's been a couple places, Madison, Wisconsin mainly, that I've really read a lot about, and it's really fun kind of seeing the history of a place. I think it like maybe at like a large scale version of a conference, right? Where like right now all these people are in this room, and it is like it only exists this way right now. In like 10 minutes, everyone will clear out, and it's supposed to be an empty space. And it'll be completely transformed because of that. And like with a lot of places, I get that feeling where it's like, oh man, I wonder what it would have been like 10 years ago or something. And to the idea of like snapshotting a map at a particular time, like it's cool. But that kind of rambling answer, I guess. But
Since that was directed to all of our panelists.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'll stand then. I get one thing that makes me think of that I felt really inspired by during all the talks today was, I guess, like failure. It seems like that was sort of a theme that cut through all of them. Is like stuff that you bump up against that didn't really work. Like reboot was used many times. It was interesting to see how many times you like tested out a different print and was like, well, actually, that's not going to do it for me. And just how much that can be like generative, and like create really incredible stuff. Andrew, the Map Center as an institution, it was really a core part of your talk. This is a crazy decision, we're going through like, kind of the shit basically. But all of these incredible things come out of it. So I think that's for me, like a very spatial phenomenon. And I feel like if we can find ways to embrace like friction, that can be really instructive.
I don't make a ton of maps these days. I mostly just get really stoked about selling maps made by other people. And it occurs to me that like the Map Center is my art project. It's sort of a weird performance art thing, at least until it becomes a real job. And what I will say is that, my apartment is less than a mile away from the Map Center. I spend way too much time there. I should probably leave more frequently. It's been a weird year for a lot of people. And a thing that I'm really grateful for is that I have something to keep me busy on all the time. There's always something to do, and my world is so much smaller than it used to be. Being in a small city in the smallest state in the union, just like barely leaving a room, it's really satisfying actually to have the scale of my world shrunken down to only the things that I can touch and control, and it's deeply therapeutic. And I don't recommend it necessarily, like across the board, but I do think it's a good place to visit. Because the alternative is thinking about all of the big things in the world that you can't change that are really frustrating and scary. I don't know if that feels vaguely related to your question, but I guess what I'm saying is that the art. Oh God, that sounds awful. The business. Yeah, I know. Stop. I didn't say it. I didn't say it. You extrapolated. Yeah, the work has changed the scale and my sense of place and my position in it, and yeah, it's a different flavor of art.
Hey, I've now forgotten the question entirely, but I'll say something about following on that answer about a factoid that I learned. From a talk, I don't know which conference, about like the rate your fingernails grow. It's the same rate as the speed of tectonic plates moving apart, and they use it to explain this thing called geographical intimacy. Just putting giant things at your fingertips and touching them, and in a way, like I think having worked with public data and the census and all its troubles. The only common thread for a lot of things are bringing things down to size, to human size, like a physical person moving in space, and that's been super inspiring, I think, in all of this work for me, and it's definitely had the end of that sentence.
So at the beginning of the session, I was like, oh, we've got extra time. A panelist had to drop out. We can have a panel discussion. We have like less than 10 minutes left right now because everyone has had such excellent questions. Does anyone want to add any other questions to our presenters or to the room, or have a general musing on Alexis's excellent question?
Yeah, this question goes out to all the panelists today here. I make maps for a class and stuff. I'm in my final year of my undergrad, and I have found that when I need to make a map for a class or even for fun, I try all of these different ideas and I go in circles, bashing my head against the wall, trying to get something to work, to find inspiration. How, more specifically, Dylan, I guess, you make maps that are absolutely beautiful, and Andrew, your store, is art, yeah, and I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on the Google data. Anyways, Ian, sorry. How do you get the inspiration to make those maps, to work on those projects, maybe for months at a time? And then how do you find the courage to follow through after hitting so many setbacks?
As far as, I guess this is my inspiration, kind of. Each of these books is like a different kind of artist. And it just brings me such joy anytime I kind of open any of these up. I want the work I'm doing to have that kind of effect for someone else, basically. I want it to be able to bring as much joy as these do to me. And so like that is what kind of keeps me making them. The other answer is I don't as much. Like I do like go out to eat with friends, or I do like, I don't work on it every day, which is why they take forever. Like the actual like time, like I think the cherry blossom app is like over a year. The Smithsonian one, that's also been going on for almost a year now. Like, so it is very much like pick up, put down, and like you do have to live, not drive yourself crazy. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that was a really perfect answer. I don't have much to add to that. I think the stuff that happens in the cracks is like where a lot of the inspiration comes from for me as well. So something that takes a really long time to make could be like 3 very distinct fugue states that you went into. And there's tons of inspiration that happens in the middle that like doesn't necessarily get represented in the final thing. But I really like that point about like the length that's also super compressed and very short in another lens.
I have always struggled with finishing projects that I started. And when I was trying to convince myself that I wasn't going to move across the country and instead I was going to do something far less self-destructive and try to do a map store in Oakland where I already had relationships and I really liked the community. And my older sibling said, like, okay, well, you say that you're going to do that, but would you actually do that? And it cut me to my core because it was true. One way to motivate yourself to finish a thing is to cross the Rubicon. I moved across the country. I wasn't going to not do it once I did it. Like, the only way out is through at this point. I'm not sure how useful that is to you, but I wonder if there are ways that you can make it structurally more difficult for yourself to not keep going. People in this room have smart brains. Your brain will outthink you, and you will convince yourself to do silly things that you didn't plan on. And if you can build structure that outsmarts your own brain, that might be useful for you.
I guess just constraints. Like, for example, I submitted a proposal for this talk just so I could have a deadline. I didn't have anything. And I think just making those really hard decisions and jumping in is really, and just hoping for the best.
That is the most relatable thing I've heard all conference. I said we have less than 10 minutes. Turns out we are fully out of time. It is break time. Let's have one more round of applause for Gia, Andrew, Ian, and Dylan. Thanks, everyone.